Hey guys, welcome. So I'm stepping into the booth. Got Greg Mitchell and Zach Onimus.
That's right. Welcome back. So in our first top 8 match here, we have Rob Van Leunen on... Leuven? Sorry.
Yep.
I always say Leuven. Rob Van Leuven on Workshops here.
Versus Josh Powell playing Oath of Druids. Yeah, so I'm stepping in the booth. I played the tournament today, but I guess I'm Card Kingdom's LSV. I keep on scrubbing out of tournaments and casting in the finals.
It's pretty convenient.
Yeah.
You're not unhappy. It's all right.
Yeah, it's not so bad. I was playing Storm today along with a quarter of the field.
Right.
And I would have to say, I audibled last night. Not a good choice. People tell you not to audible. Shouldn't have audibled.
What were you going to play originally?
I was going to play Doomsday. I had it sleeved up and was testing last night, and it seemed like a worse version of Storm.
Yeah.
I think it's just metagamed against a different field.
Okay.
And I think Doomsday is better against a broader field.
Okay, so what about the field today did you think was hostile versus Storm?
So there's more shops than we've seen online, and than I would have expected. There about a quarter of the field was shops.
Okay.
And then there's a lot of Storm decks, which I think is going to favor Doomsday over Storm, because Storm, the sideboard, you have Mindbreak Traps and discard, and just being faster, versus Doomsday, you have Force of Wills, Mental Missteps, Flush of Storms, plus just the combo.
So in like a format of Storm and Workshops, if you're playing Storm, you're going to be disadvantaged in a lot of matchups, or you're going to be kind of coin flippy in a lot of matchups. And I imagine if you're playing Doomsday, that's still pretty rough versus Workshops, and you're feeling disadvantaged versus Storm.
You're right, it is pretty rough versus Workshops, but at least it has more different answers. Like, just Hurkyl's Recall and Chain of Vapor I found was pretty bad against a field that also had a lot of Stony Silences that were here today.
Well, here we go for the first match. It looks like we're about to see our opening sevens, and I'm not sure who had the higher seed here, but...
I'm pretty sure it was Rob. So Rob was undefeated going into the top 8. I know he double drew in. So it looks like Rob's going to be on the play. That's super important for shops. Being able to deploy a Thorn or a Chalice. I know there's only one of them, but Thorn or Chalice before his opponent gets to cast any spells is going to be a huge advantage.
Yep. I'm looking at Rob's hand, and I'm not seeing any fast mana. He does have a Strip Mine.
Agreed. I would definitely mulligan this hand. Looks like he kept it, though. So he has 2 lands, Strip Mine, and a couple of Thorns, a couple of Sphere effects. Usually with shops, the criteria for keeping a hand is doing something on turn 1.
Josh Monks did not actually sneak into the top 8 here, so I'm getting Casey to change that real quick.
That would be quite a sneaky play, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So it looks like Rob's kind of relying on just casting a disruption piece on turn 2 and hoping that Josh doesn't have anything too explosive on his turn 1, because he's not going to be able to interact with that at all.
Yeah, so Oath can be a pretty bad matchup for shops, because Oath is such a cheap threat, and the other half of the combo is just a land.
Right. Yeah, so, I mean, Josh's hand does look pretty good here. I mean, I know that Flusterstorm is a dead card in this matchup, but he's got a Force of Will to pair with, so...
Right, that's a good point.
Right.
I know Josh doesn't have his full set of power, so I think it's awesome that he's made it here to this top 8. That's good. And it looks like, despite not having all the Moxes, he's still got a turn 1 Oath.
Yeah. So, if you're in Rob's spot here, you just cast disruption pieces and hope that Mana Crypt finishes Josh off at some point?
Yeah, that's a good play. I like it. Yeah, so definitely Rob's deck relies on creatures to win. He will find it tough to win without playing any threats. Maybe his best line of victory is to maybe duplicate, or like to have duplicate and metamorph, so he could like copy whatever Josh puts into play off Oath, and then duplicate it away.
Okay. So Josh is going to float a colorless here and cast a Preordain.
Yeah.
And I think at this point, Josh is just sort of racing to find Forbidden Orchard so that he can put a creature into play for Rob.
That makes sense. So it looks like Rob named Horror on that Cavern of Souls. So this is a pretty cool play. So that means that any Phyrexian Revoker that he might draw is uncounterable.
Okay, and Rob actually here, it looks like, kind of locked himself out of playing his second lock piece because he didn't draw a third land.
Yeah.
And I think I see a demonic tutor in Josh's hand, so I would kind of expect him to just go get the orchard here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's with the strip mine in play. I'm very tempted to strip him, but he is really struggling to just cast his spells.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how hard he wants to commit to mana crypt winning the game. Yeah, Rob is done.
Yeah, Rob is certainly not one to keep on playing games after they're pretty much over. And with Rob pretty much locked out and unable to cast creatures for Fear of Oath, he's not doing much this game.
Okay, so let's take a look at Rob's sideboard here. He has 1 Ghost Quarter, 1 Caracas, 2 Witchbane Orb, 3 Crypt, Tormod's Crypt, 4 Grafdigger's Cage, 2 Crucible of World, 1 Wormcoil Engine, and 1 Triskelion. What are you bringing in here against Oath?
So Ghost Quarter and Caracas seem good. Caracas for sure to hit all the legends. Ghost Quarter can maybe lock him out of mana. Witchbane Orb is surprisingly a really good thing to bring in. So it turns out that Oath targets an opponent. So if you play Witchbane Orb, you can't be targeted by Oath, which means that it doesn't do anything.
Okay, and it looks like Rob's bringing out some of the cheap creatures like Phyrexian Revoker, and he's running a version of Martello Shop, so he's not running Arcbound Ravager and cards like that. So
That's right.
Keeping in the big, impactful artifact creatures and taking out the ones that are sort of smaller and a little disruptive, but not very powerful.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we didn't mention Grafdigger's Cage. Of course, this is hate that's good against Oath, it's good against Dredge. That's why we see it in so many sideboards. And it's kind of funny that if you have Forge Master in play and Grafdigger's Cage in play, normally that's kind of a non-bo, but you can actually just sacrifice Grafdigger's Cage to pay the cost of Forge Master's ability and then fetch up a creature because it's no longer locking you out.
Oh, and Josh briefly flashed his hand. I saw at least 3 Nature's Claim, but I'll go over the whole sideboard here in a sec. So he has 1 Pithing Needle, 1 Elish Norn, 1 Sphinx of the Steel Wind, 2 Tormod's Crypt, 4 Leyline of the Void, 3 Nature's Claim, 1 Beast Within, 1 Hurkyl's Recall, and 1 Thoughtseize. What are you bringing in here?
Yeah, so Josh was trying to get me to guess a 3-mana green instant that he had in the sideboard that was clutch, and I just couldn't guess it. Beast Within does seem good. It's a little expensive for this matchup, but being able to hit Caracas or any other hate permanent that Rob might have makes it pretty versatile.
And it's pretty sweet. I don't know if it's too techy, but it does turn on Oath of Druids if you don't have a Forbidden Orchard.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a cool card. I'm surprised that most Oath decks don't play it. I would for sure bring in Nature's Claim, Beast Within, Hurkyl's Recall, and then I saw that Josh brought in Sphinx of Steel Wind as well, which makes sense. I don't know if they have deck lists. Maybe he's just hedging against the possibility that Rob does. And of course, it turns out that Rob does have Caracas. So Sphinx is a good way to get around Dak Fade to get around Caracas. Another Oath thing to tutor up.
Okay, do you bring in Pithing Needle to name like Wasteland or Forge Master or even Caracas?
I don't think so. I don't think there's enough cards that you want to cut there. I would expect him to cut Missteps and Fluster Storms for sure, and he probably wants to bring in
so that's
6 or 7 cards.
Well, and Swan Song does nothing. So
that's true.
He's got at least 6 cuts, and you mentioned the 5 earlier, and we saw the Sphinx. So I mean, he only has to cut 1 more. He's got all these bad cards in this matchup.
That's a good point. Looks like Rob has a hand that's heavy with lands, but he has 2 Workshops and Chalice. So I don't think you can send that back.
That's pretty good.
I can't make out. I think he has a Wasteland as well, so that could be pretty good.
Yeah, and something I've seen in these later rounds is some really disciplined mulliganing from players. In the last round, we saw somebody on red-white death and taxes essentially, and he threw back a couple of decent disruption piece on turn 2 hands because he was kind of just saying, look, I need a turn 1 disruption piece. And similar thing for Josh here. He's throwing back some medium hands to say, look, it doesn't matter if I'm on the draw versus shops, I have to have a hand that can interact with his turn 1 lock piece.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm a little surprised he threw back the first one. I didn't get a good glimpse, but I know he had Force of Will plus a blue card and some lands. Maybe it just didn't have anything going on besides that?
Okay, yeah, If you force his first piece, but then don't have anything to do proactively, he's just going to have a second one. So
Right.
The whole deck's full of block pieces.
Yeah, for sure. And Oath definitely is the deck that mulligans well. All you need is Oath and a couple of lands.
Yeah. So let's hope when he looks at 5, it's not Griselbrand, Emrakul, because that's always the downside of playing Oath.
Looks like he has a land and Force Will. That seems okay.
Yeah,
If he can just find another mana source, then he should be solid.
I know there's been a lot of Magic tournaments since the rule came out, but I really love the new Scry rule. I think it's really great. I think it incentivizes mulliganing. It kind of pays people off for doing the right thing.
So we see that. I think that's a good point. Yeah, it helps reduce variance. It's a cool one. So we see that Rob led off on Ancient Tomb, which is good for playing around. It's good for playing around Wasteland, but he should know that his opponent is on Oath and doesn't have Wasteland.
Yeah, you would have expected him to play the shops, I take it?
The Workshop or the Wasteland, actually.
Okay.
Because he will want to get Wasteland online, and now he is...
It looks like he's
wow.
putting Chalice on 2.
Interesting, okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. He's most afraid of Oath in this matchup, and Josh might have Hurkyl's Recall as well. Now, Chalice on 2 does shut off a lot of Rob's deck.
Well, I mean, remember he sided out a lot of the 2s in his list, so I mean he's definitely a bigger shops list right now.
That makes sense. It looks like he has Sundering Titan in his hand.
Yeah, which he can cast next turn if he has a second Workshop. So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Looks like he does.
How's this? What if I hard cast a Sundering Titan on turn 3? Thoughts?
It only hits one land. Not that good. Well, him destructing him is also fine.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
So we see that Rob was setting up for the turn 3 Sundering Titan, from what it looks like.
Okay.
With that Ancient Tomb on 1. So I guess leading on Wasteland would not have allowed him to do that play.
Okay. Do you expect Josh here to take the Batterskull or the Duplicate?
That's a tough one. Duplicate doesn't do anything right now, but if he manages to get a creature in play via Show and Tell or Oath, then it will be very tough for Josh to win. So taking Duplicate makes sense. Batterskull can do some damage, though.
Yeah, I mean, and Rob is doing, pretty good chunks of damage to himself with this Ancient Tomb, so he's going to be able to gain some back.
Yeah, for sure. This is going to be a good turn for Rob if he gets to Wasteland plus play Batterskull.
Yeah. There we go.
The shop's draws when they draw Workshop are just so powerful. Oh, I see what's happening. He's making 2 Batterskulls.
Yeah, it looks like he drew a Phyrexian Metamorph here, so he's going to be getting the beatdowns on.
Yeah, I think I would have sequenced that differently. If Josh had another Force Will, which I don't even know if he could have had in his hand, you probably want to tap the Workshop and have one floating.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then there is a reasonable chance that he didn't want to play Metamorph at all, because if Josh gets a creature into play, then you do want to be able to Metamorph it to copy it. Like, having a Griselbrand or Emrakul of your own is a good way to beat your opponents.
I mean, he just took his first hit here, so I think he's down at like 11. But I imagine if he gets Griselbrand, he's probably going to find either a Force of Will or something to hit Rob's Metamorph. So I can see the appeal of just wanting to beat down a little faster and making a copy of your opponent's Emrakul. Not that relevant because they make you sack 6 permanents and it just gets you anyways.
That makes sense.
And he would have had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He would have had exactly 6 at that time, so Emrakul still would have gotten him.
Cavern of Souls on Shapeshifter is actually a pretty common play in the Shops deck because it pays for that Phyrexian mana, which otherwise you normally can't pay, and it also makes the clone uncounterable. So if you're cloning the best thing on the board and they can't counter it, it's a good place to be.
Okay. And life total is not really an issue for Rob anymore.
That's true. You gained to 8.
Yep.
Looks like a scoop, I think.
Yeah, it looks like Josh pump fakes the Show and Tell, has nothing in hand, and scoops up for game 3 here. But it's going to be big for him to be on the play here. It gives him the opportunity to play some spells without having the fear of a disruptive piece on the other side of the board.
Yeah, good point. So one thing that might have incentivize Rob to play it on Batterskull is you can actually pick up the Metamorph that's copying Batterskull and then replay Metamorph. What do you think about that?
Interestingly, he couldn't actually have done that because the workshops will not activate the ability. They only cast artifact spells. So,
True, but if he draws any land,
that's true.
any non-workshop land.
Yeah, I think... I don't know. I liked Rob's play. It seemed pretty clear that Josh was nowhere near going off because of the double force, kind of double hemming himself. So,
Yeah,
being aggressive seemed like it worked out.
that makes sense. Mulligan to 5 and just put the pressure on your opponent.
Also, if Josh had landed an Oath and Rob did have the mana, he could return both his Batterskulls and not activate the Oath. Just get him.
Oh, no way. That's pretty sick.
Alright, so it didn't look like either player made any substantial changes. I mean, it seems like the cards that are good on Rob's side are very good, and the cards on Josh's side are, I don't know. He doesn't have as much wiggle room once the cards like Flusterstorm and Minimal Step are out.
Yeah, I think Josh doesn't change much play draw, but Rob can. So Tanglewire is much better. Well, Tanglewire is kind of weird. So Tanglewire is one way that you break the Shop's Mirror on the draw. Normally, Shops on the draw is really bad in the mirror. But Tanglewire is a good way to catch up, especially against blue decks, because you just tap down the permanents that have managed to get in play, and then you catch up with your own permanent heavy deck.
Alright, so Josh threw back a hand. It looked like it had a Mox and a Forbidden Orchard, but it looked light on action and on Oaths. Rob's hand looks pretty sick. He's got at least a Grafdigger's Cage and a couple of Workshops, so he's set up. I didn't see how many lock pieces he had there.
So he has Thorn, Mox, Workshop, Lodestone Golem, and
yeah.
You said Grafdigger's Cage as well?
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how he sequences this. He could, if he wants to play around Force Will, he can lead Thorn into Grafdigger's Cage, and that plays around Force Will pretty well. His other option is just jam Lodestone on turn 1. So on the draw, I think that's going to be a little more suspect because it doesn't lock out your opponent's first spell, and your opponent is already able to put a land in play and start being able to like play through that Lodestone Golem.
Wow.
So I like the Thorn into Grafdigger's Cage play.
Interesting playing the Orchard on turn 1. He does have a Trop in his hand, and I can't tell if that's an Ancestral in his hand. I know he has a Show and Tell and a Vampiric.
I think, given that he just drew the Mox, I would Wasteland his land, go to combat if he floats mana, and then play both Moxes and the Thorn.
Okay. And you think that's better than playing 2 lock pieces on the first turn?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
Like, Forbidden Orchard is pretty critical to Josh's ability both to cast spells and to set up his Oath. And Josh is now faced with a tough decision. Does he tap does he tap Orchard to give Rob a creature? But if he does, then Rob all of a sudden has a threat.
Wow. And I thought that I saw an Oath on top of Josh's deck, but I'm guessing that's not the case if he let that go without making a guy.
Yeah.
Alright, so here's a turn 1 lock piece, and Josh is on no permanents.
There you go. Land are pretty much the things you want to be drawing here. So Rob has a choice. He can play the Strip Mine and continue to lock his opponent out of mana, or he can play the Workshop and the Lodestone Golem.
I'd have a hard time not playing the Wasteland and the Cage this turn, I would think. Although I might be hallucinating the Cage. I don't actually see it now.
It kind of looks like a Revoker to me.
Okay.
I think I would have played the Lodestone Golem just so you can start to apply pressure. And given that Josh is a fairly non-artifact heavy deck.
Okay, he does have the Cage.
In this Cage, alright.
Yeah, so he's pretty good there. We do see that Josh has a Show and Tell in his hand, but now does not have any mana sources in play. Has a C. Not able to cast any spells. And here comes Lodestone Golem, I imagine.
Yeah, this is just going to be the hammer stroke. Once Lodestone Golem gets in play, every non-artifact spell costs 2 more, It's going to be very, very tough for Josh to kill this.
Yep. And Josh
Source
has a Nature's Claim in hand, but not only does he not have a green source, but it's going to cost 3 now with the Golem and the Thorn in play.
Yeah, so it looks like Rob has been very careful to try to play around any sort of Nature's Claim that Josh has had. My greedy play of playing it the turn before would have just been claimed.
Yep, yeah, you would have had the Lodestone Golem away.
Yeah.
All right, okay, here comes the Batter Skull. So
Can
now,
you actually cast that? 1, 2, 5. Oh, yeah, you can.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a strong 6 mana.
All right, and things are looking pretty grim here for Josh.
I agree.
He's taken 2 hits from Golem, so this attack will put him down to 1, which turns off all fetches. I guess it's a good thing he didn't make an Orchard token. I guess he's down to 6 because I can't math.
So Rob could have put him at 4 by attacking with this this factory. I didn't see what was in his hand.
Yeah, it looks like another Chalice on 2, I would guess.
Yeah, Chalice on 2.
Oh, and he draws the powerful Emrakul.
Yeah. So that was a quick match.
Yeah, so Rob's going on to the semifinals, and Josh Powell takes an exit in the quarters. Really well played, I thought, by both players there. I really liked how aggressively Josh mulled. I know it didn't work out for him there, but he looked at a lot of hands that were sort of middling, but would have lost to Rob Straub as it was. So.
Yeah, it takes a lot of discipline. That's a good point. I know I have a lot of trouble throwing away hands that can cast spells and play lands.
Right. I mean, the thing about Vintage is it feels like your hands are so powerful that if you can just string together 1 or 2 of the good spells, you can kind of run away with it, whereas having like a dead mental misstep in your hand or a Flusterstorm that can just kind of crush you anyways.
Yeah, that's very true. Especially with powerful cards like Ancestral Recall and Oath of Druids to catch back up. Either on cards or just position.
All right, so I don't know if we're trying to set